Room service if I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in
Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to another edition of the Steelers Q&A, a post-draft edition. And we've been busy here. You've been tracking our live streams the last few days, and we are not done. We're going to keep bringing it to you as we always do with all the breakdowns, all the news and notes. So if you are listening live, give us your comments, tune in, tell us what you're thinking. We will talk to you and answer your questions in this show. Be sure to like and subscribe, follow the FFSN NFL channel, as well as the Steel Curtain Network, where we've got you covered for everything NFL and NFL draft. To help me break things down from a Steelers perspective after the draft, I got one of my favorites, one of your favorites here on the show, Corey Eckenroth at Steely_McPitt. Welcome into the show, man. How you doing?
How's it going, Jeremy? I am doing great. I am riding the Claritin Clear high right now. I got the spring allergies going. I probably sound terrible, so we're gonna ride with it. But I'm on some performance enhancing drugs right now. I have to admit that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're a little bit more loose about our regulations here on the Steel Curtain Network. So we won't be kicking you off the show unless it gets a little too wild. We'll see. But maybe
if I go off
the
rails, you've got permission to just boot me.
Yeah, I'll boot you, man. We've got some regulars in the chat. Thanks to all for tuning in over the weekend, for the draft show, for the live streams. I mean, what was it? Ended up being, I think, 10 to 12 hours of actual, no, it was more than that. It was like 14 hours of content over the course of those 3 days. But hey, we're here again today, and we're not going to cut you short on this one either. We're going to bring everything to you. So let's just open it up while we're waiting on some questions in here, adding these guys in here. Corey, the draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 7 selections after they trade back in the 6th round and add an additional one. And how are we feeling after this draft from your angle, Corey? Did you like the process, the picks? How are we feeling?
Well, this being Omar Khan's 3rd draft now, I have to continue giving him absolutely top marks. He absolutely nailed this draft again. I mean, defensive tackle was one of the absolute glaring issues with this team. What's he go out and do? He gets Derek Harmon, an absolute perfect fit for this team at 21. And in the round 2, we didn't even have a pick, but we still got a pick because we got DK Metcalf with that 2nd pick. So if you're keeping score at home, we got DK Metcalf, we got Derek Harmon. And then, in the 3rd round, we got Caleb Johnson, who's another absolute perfect for this offense. And he just keeps nailing it. Omar Khan just keeps nailing it. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. I'll say, like, there were a couple spots in the draft where they went a little bit different direction than I was expecting, but it wasn't in a way that I was like, oh, why are we doing this? It made sense. It was calculated.
There was never a panic moment.
Yeah. And it was for a purpose. It had a goal and a plan in mind. And when you listen to guys like Tomlin talk afterwards, and even Omar on the platform, it was all about kind of reestablishing a physical dominance up front on the defensive side of the ball specifically, which was something that was sorely lacking against big time physical opponents at the end of last year.
I mean, when you're talking about 299 yards rushing given up, that's the only number you really need to think about when you're trying to figure out what to do in draft day. I mean, when you're looking back at what the Ravens did to this team, that's where it has to start. And that's what they did. They went out, they stuck to the plan. I give Tomlin and Khan all the credit in the world. They had every media pundit breathing down their neck to take Shedeur Sanders, and they didn't. They stuck to the plan. They executed it perfectly. And I still think they got the better quarterback at the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's a quarterback I liked more.
I agree with you.
Especially at that spot. I mean, I think Shedeur Sanders probably more talented overall, but I did like Will Howard's upside, especially where they got him.
I have to say that if you're gonna compare Shedeur Sanders with the Browns to Will Howard with the Steelers, it's a wash. I would consider it a wash. I think with the way that Shadur Sanders is going to be played for the Browns, I think it's a better fit. Same way with Will Howard. I think Will Howard's a better fit for the Steelers. And I think because he's a better fit for the Steelers, I think that that comparison's a wash.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I believe in that as well. I think when you're talking about the way that the Steelers took things here and ignoring Shedeur Sanders the multiple times he came around to them, it was very clear that they're looking for a specific type of quarterback this season, and they weren't about to jeopardize their pursuit of a potential superstar quarterback in 2026 by bringing somebody in earlier this season. So they
Yeah,
wait to land Howard, and there's no pressure on this kid, but if somehow, some way he looks like something, then you can still draft a guy in the first round next year and then let those two duke it out and compete and see what you got there. But there's no obligation to write it out for 3 or 4 years with him like there would have been with Shedeur Sanders if you took him any point before
first, third.
they
Yeah, totally
yeah.
agree. And, we're going to be talking about this quarterback comparison between the Steelers and the Browns for at least another year. They were both in the running for Shadur Sanders. They both took quarterbacks late. They're both in the running for a blue chip quarterback next year. Cleveland
Mhm.
has 2 first round picks. They've got more capital than the Steelers do to move up. So we have to kind of keep an eye. We have to kind of scoreboard watch throughout the season to see what Cleveland's doing. We got to hope that they actually have a decent record, just not against the Steelers,
Mhm.
because the more that it costs the Steelers to move up, Cleveland just has that much more capital.
Yeah,
So you've got to hope that the Steelers and the Browns aren't looking at the same players in next year's draft, because otherwise that could turn into a really hairy situation.
right. It could. It could. And fortunately for the Pittsburgh Steelers, these two franchises are so stylistically different, especially coaching. I think that it might play to their advantage. It looks like a buddy back there is having a good time, and we had a good time over the weekend, so it's all fun.
Sage just came in from her walk. She's still getting her energy out.
Sure, had a girl, Sage, get it done.
That's right.
Okay, so some comments and questions here from Daredevil. No Shador equals a failed draft. There's a lot
Ooh.
of Steeler fans that feel this way, Corey, and um, I mean a lot of Shador fans out there. So how
Well,
do you argue a point against this? I mean,
let me ask a question and let me ask a question to retort to that. So had the Steelers taken Harmon, had the Steelers taken Caleb Johnson, had the Steelers then selected Shadur Sanders in the sixth, then all of a sudden is the draft good because you took Shadur Sanders and not Will Howard?
mm,
I think that this was a good draft regardless of which quarterback they took.
yeah. I'm sorry, I was reading something else here.
That's all good.
So Daredevil, were you joking about the Shador comment? Because that's what I was pulling up was the thought that there is a contingent. I mean, whether Daredevil believes it or not, or is joking or not, there's a contingent out there that says,
They've
if
they've
yeah,
been
if you
noisy. They've been super noisy, and yeah, I mean,
you
I
miss out
think
on Shador, you miss out on a good
I think
draft. Yeah.
I think we know Daredevil enough to know he's joking around on this one, but yeah.
I hope so.
No, he is.
uh, good deal. Good deal. Um, so one thing that I think needs brought up here is I feel like that the Steelers front office has really done a good job under Omar Khan and Andy Weidel of filling the areas that need bolstering the most when you're talking about like team building process, which it's the trenches on both sides of the ball. And it
Yeah,
has to start there. So this part of the season, it's absolutely appropriate to give them kudos and to give them credit for what they've accomplished in the draft, free agency, whatever, over the course of their time here. From this point on, though, it is on Mike Tomlin and his coaching staff that he has put together to maximize their potential and to utilize them in a correct way
yes.
to, again, maximize what they have, what they can offer you. That is where I think a lot of Steelers fans are frustrated, is that they
Yeah.
don't feel like guys are getting maximized.
Maximized,
So,
yeah.
from that perspective, Corey, my biggest question, the biggest remaining question about the Steelers after the draft, it's been my question all along. How do the Steelers utilize and implement these players onto their roster to improve on what they've been the last few years. I think we're all ready to see that happen. I think we all, for the most part, believe that the decision makers as far as personnel or player personnel have done their best to get the horses that you need.
Yeah.
But the driver of the carriage needs to pick up his game a little bit.
Ooh, are you saying that Tomlin needs to coach better?
I'm saying Tomlin,
Ooh.
maybe not himself, but he needs to get people in the building that can help out, right?
Yeah, I'd
People in the
agree with that.
building that are not Pat Myers ceiling or,
Totally agree with that.
those types of guys. Yeah.
No, I think the bigger question then needs to be the little and often not often talked about fact that the Steelers have one of the lowest coaching payrolls in the league.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
if we're going to maximize these guys, we've got to, put more coaches on the field who can help them to maximize that talent. Now, they did a good job last year of adding more coaches to the roster. That was a very big point in their offseason last year. They went out and got a new wide receivers coach. They added a couple of other guys that they normally wouldn't have put on their payroll just because they knew that they needed more personnel. I'm hoping that they take that step again this year. They start to bring in a couple of other coaches who can understand the scheme, what they're trying to do. But it really does come down to the coaching. They've got the talent in the building now. It all comes down to execution, just like it always does. I mean, that's what every year is about. It's about execution. And that's what it comes down to now. We've got the guys in the building. We had a great draft. We've had 3 great drafts in a row. We're continuing to build this offensive line. Let's get to the point where this team can now take the next step. And I feel like the Steelers have done that. They've continued to develop the players that they got last year on the offensive line. They've now bought into the defensive line this year. They're going to continue to do the same with that. They had Benton from last year. I mean, this is going to be a different Steelers team. I mean, by all means, you don't have Najee Harris running the ball. Like, you're not going to see the players you saw last year. But I think that this team actually has an opportunity to be better. And I'm saying that, and we don't even know who the quarterback is for week 1.
Yeah.
I feel that I feel that listen, we all know that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign, but listen. I'm just going to say this one time, and it's the only time I'm going to say this, and I hope nobody remembers this, but I have this feeling in the back of my head, and I hope it doesn't happen, that Aaron Rodgers is going to screw this team. And there was talk about Minnesota. There's talk about retirement. This dude is drama king enough and selfish enough. I could see that happening. And where does that leave the Steelers if that happens? It leaves us with Mason Rudolph as the number 1 quarterback. Now, the great thing about it is, and Jeremy, that was my next point. This Steelers team, the front office, the management has done such a good job of building the team that I think that they can still win 8, 9, 10 games with Mason Rudolph. I really do. They've built the defense. The biggest thing is going to be, what can they do against the run defense? That run defense was atrocious in the playoffs. They've got to do something about that. That's the one glaring issue. If they can get the run defense fixed, it gives the offense more snaps. It's a different team.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I've been saying that Aaron Rodgers' presence might just be the balancing effect that everybody needs. And there's a world where it does go to crap, but there's a world where it works out pretty well. And the best part about it, though, is that there's no commitment and tie-in past this year again. And so if for some reason things fall apart, then you can go to your next guys and you don't feel any obligation to make it work.
Let me just say that I will say that I really do believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign his contract. But in the back of my mind, there is that just wondering if what happens if he just decides just to hang it up or go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question. It's a question to have. We're having some conversation in the chat about Mike Tomlin and how good of a coach is he actually. And to me, it's asinine to say that he's a bad coach. He is a really good coach. He puts together rosters that compete every year, but he has his limitations. And that is where I think that he has done a poor job of bringing people in around him on the coaching staff to mitigate some of those limitations and to improve the areas where he is weak. He needs to have people in there that are telling him when to challenge plays. He needs to have people in there in his head telling him clock management type things. He is not good at those things. Anybody who says that he is poor at clock management and all that stuff, 100% on board with that. But to say that Tomlin is a bad coach is missing the point. The point is that he or Art Rooney or whatever that combination is there have not done enough around him to mitigate the weak areas and strengthen them overall and lift up those spots. So Tomlin is to blame for that, but
And
to
I
say
think I
he's
know
a
why.
bad coach is a problem.
But I think I know why. When Mason. I was thinking of something else. I'm looking at some of the comments where they were talking about Mason and goateeless wins. Jared Temple was making. Anyways, with Mike Tomlin, when he's more of a hands-off coach. He's more of a player's. We've heard these things before. He's not Bill Cowher, who was a more hands-on disciplinarian coach. So I think that when sometimes the team is not doing the things that we expect them to do, we want Tomlin to be a more hands-on coach, but that's not who he is. And I think that at those times, we wish that he was more hands-on, that he needs to be more hands-on, and I don't know who's making those decisions.
Right.
You mentioned the clock management and the challenges. For as amazing as Bill Cowher was at winning almost every single challenge, Tomlin has been the complete opposite. And I feel like karma is now evening all of that out over the time that
Right.
he's been coach. But to have somebody there to tell you to be aware of what's going on, that's not a good look. So
Yeah.
part of it is Tomlin's fault, but at the same time, these players want to play for Tomlin. They will run through walls for Tomlin. And you can't ask for more than that from anybody,
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
what do you do in that situation? He's a great coach. And I don't know what it would take to get, because I'm me myself. If I'm looking at the situation, I am a Bill Cowher type of disciplinarian type of person. I would say, well, you need more discipline. That's how you fix this. If you have the discipline, you don't have the penalties. You get the challenge call. But having somebody who's more of a player's coach and can get the players to buy in, that means that is invaluable, and you can't put a value on that. So where do you draw the line? Where do you tell Mike Tomlin that he's no longer effective at doing what he does when he doesn't have a losing season?
Yeah, that is the question. And it's a tough spot to be in for Steelers fans, because there's a world where you can move on from him and be better off because you do that. But there's a serious world as well, and maybe an even more likely one where you're worse.
Yeah.
Where some of these rosters from the past few seasons that are not playoff rosters that he has willed there with a defense and with just his ability to raise the floor of this team, that doesn't happen under just any ball coach. And so I would say, as my final thought on Tomlin, before we get into some questions in the second half of the show about the draft itself, my final thought is that this is a guy who knows how to get his squad ready to play. He puts together a winning culture better than anybody else, that's replicatable every year. Bill Belichick couldn't do that once Tom Brady left.
Right.
Mike Tomlin's better at that than Bill Belichick was. Now, is he better
maintaining
winning the clutch moments? No, he's not.
Tomlin is better at maintaining a floor than anybody else in the league.
Yeah. He's a culture setter and a floor raiser. And then that's what I'm saying is that you've got to add pieces around yourself on that coaching staff now to raise your ceiling, because Mike Tomlin's not going to do that. That is his limitation. He will not raise the ceiling of this team. What he will do, though, is raise the floor to playoff contention every single year. And from there, you need a
That's better.
boost.
That's
And
better
some
than
guys do.
being
Most
Marvin
guys do.
Lewis every year with the Bengals, where you're just there for 15 years and there's no success whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to see the same thing with Dan Campbell. We're going to see what Dan Campbell did. If it was that him that got them to
Or was it Ben
NFC
Johnson?
championships
Yeah,
and stuff, or was that the cast around him? Because I think he's a floor raiser too. I think he's that kind of coach. He's
agreed.
a Mike Tomlin type coach from that regard. But he did a better job putting guys around him to raise the ceiling. Now will he be able to do that again once those guys are gone? We will see.
I think the Fords are going to be a little more respective of what Campbell wants to do than the Rooneys will be with Tomlin and what he wants to do and the coaches he wants to bring in.
Yeah.
I think in simplifying that statement, I think the Rooneys are going to be more hands-on on the coaches that Tomlin chooses.
Yeah. All right. Hey, let's do this. Let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we will start answering some of the questions. We've got a super chat in here we want to get to. We've got all of the other mentions and questions in here that we want to get to as well. So stay tuned. If you're listening live, we're not going anywhere, but if you're listening on audio only, we'll be right back after these messages. And we are back here on the Steelers Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts, joined by Corey Eckenroth. I don't know what that dance was, but keep it up.
Happy to be back.
Yeah, man. Happy to be back.
That's the Clarity Clear dance.
I love it. Okay,
see,
so
you
let's
see
get
my
into
head
some
right
of these,
here. It's actually like way up here somewhere.
way over there. Yeah, so you're here, but not all there. Is that what you're saying?
That is the perfect statement right about now.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. All righty. Let's do this. Let's get into some questions here. Let's start with our super chat. And it's from B Metlow, $1.99. Thank you so much, sir, for your contribution here. I saw your question earlier. I was going to get to it, but thanks for popping in the $1.99, and we will make sure we get to it first here. With Rodgers at quarterback, does that fix Pickens' issues? And I'll throw it up what he said before. If Rodgers is on the roster, do you guys think Pickens will start acting right?
I did see that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did want to respond to that. I read an
Yeah.
article earlier today. I didn't have any time to do any research for the validity of it, but there was a report that George Pickens had donated a whole bunch of money to a Pittsburgh residence to get it turned over for, I think it was some kind of residence for orphans or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, if he's pulling those kinds of moves and Rodgers isn't even the QB yet,
Yeah.
is he turning over a new leaf? Is he like, holy crap, I don't want to get kicked out of Pittsburgh. Maybe I need to change what I'm doing. What is that? I mean, listen, I'm not going to fault the guy if he really wants to donate his money for philanthropic services like this and help people out. That's what these athletes should be doing. I'm not gonna bust his balls about that. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to fix George Pickens. I think if anything, he'll enable him to do more, do worse, because that's the kind of person that Aaron Rodgers is. Yeah, I don't think that Rodgers is going to be fixing anything except how well the quarterback position can execute.
Yeah. So I don't see Rodgers as much of an enabler as maybe they just get too frustrated with each other for it to work.
That's possible too.
That's the thing is like Aaron Rodgers comes off the sideline after an incompletion or an interception and says,
"Yeah,
bro, run your route, man." And George is like,
I can see Pickens
dude.
be like right in his face. Oh, I can see him giving it right back to him.
You just need to throw it where I'm at. I'll catch it if you throw it where I'm at.
No, I can see
like,
that.
No, be in your spot.
I can see that Pickens conversation going completely different because like all Aaron Rodgers has to do is get it within the zip code of George Pickens and he'll put his hands on it. So George Pickens would be like, dude, you just got to get it near me and I'm going to get it. So just get it near me. And that's going to be the whole argument that they have.
Right. Exactly. So, it could be one of those things where having a guy who's willing to throw you the ball, with more reckless abandon than the previous couple guys have. I think that might be a good thing. And it could also be a bad thing if it turns into poor plays and guys are out of position.
I think it can be a good thing because I think that, when push comes to shove, George Pickens has way more athletic ability than Devontae Adams. And the ability of George Pickens to make just some absolutely mind-boggling catches for that man, it's going to change Aaron Rodgers' mind of him immediately. So I could see it going both ways. I could see
Yep.
them having both problems during the season.
Yeah,
Two things can
absolutely.
be true at once here.
Right. Exactly. So along those lines, Patrick Stevens asks, once we sign Rodgers, how will this offense look different than last year? And I think, to me, the first thing I
Downfield,
would say,
pushing it
is
downfield.
downfield, middle of the field.
Yep.
Is
Yes.
that Aaron Rodgers is still willing to say screw it and chuck it over the middle of the field.
With
And
this defense,
Russell
I'm
Wilson,
willing to allow him to do that.
yeah. And Russell Wilson, Justin Fields weren't willing to do that. Kenny Pickett wasn't willing to do that. Matt Canada wasn't willing for them to do that. One thing we know for dang sure is that Arthur Smith wants to do that. That's
Right.
all that they did with Tannehill in Tennessee and with Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. I mean, Desmond Ritter's basically out of the league, and they won 7 games with him under Arthur Smith throwing prayers over the middle of the field.
So I got this question, like, where is that offense at? Where has Arthur Smith been calling all of these tight end plays? Like, this dude was so prolific with his tight end usage. We haven't seen that yet.
It was the quarterbacks last year. They don't like to throw over the middle. They don't like to throw those balls because they don't play with anticipation. Russell Wilson is a see it, throw it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're high risk plays.
Russell Wilson's a see it, throw it player, and so was Fields. It's just in 2 different body types. So that's why I think it didn't happen. But Rodgers would change that. Now, Rodgers doesn't love to be under center as much, although he did it more with the Jets than he did it with Green Bay. So they may have to transition to some shotgun-based RPO type stuff, as opposed to all of the under center play action stuff. But you can be effective with that too, with Rodgers counts and everything. So I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at this because I'm sitting here thinking we have to go back to a shotgun RPO system like Ben was running in 2020. Like,
okay,
we're 5
but yeah,
years removed and we're back to the same offense.
You got to like the offensive line better though to be able to play that way.
Way better.
Yeah. Yeah. What other ways do you think Aaron Rodgers changes the look of this offense?
I mean, just his leadership on offense will make a difference. You know, not having somebody back there. You had Russell Wilson back there and he was providing leadership. It's not the type of leadership that creates other leaders though. And you need somebody like that who can cultivate other leaders by the leadership that they're providing. And I just didn't see that from Russell Wilson last year. And you heard comments from Najee Harris about that, you know, towards the beginning of last season, or he made the comments at the end of the season about the beginning of last season, you know, where he didn't really have any mentors that were telling him how blah, 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 how things were supposed to go. So I think that Aaron Rodgers can provide that leadership to show others how to be leaders. The question is, how much do you want them to be Aaron Rodgers leaders?
Sure.
Because that's a legitimate question. Like, his leadership style is you got to take it or leave it.
It's not for everyone.
It's not for everybody. But
hey, Roethlisberger was the same way too, though.
It's very
His
true.
leadership style wasn't for everybody. Yeah.
And both of them had the very same problem that we're going to have next year. Neither one of them wanted to teach their backup how to do their job, and we absolutely have to have that next year.
Yeah. Maybe I think Rodgers did turn a leaf in that regard with the Jets, because he was, I don't know if you watch Hard Knocks with the Jets, but he and Zach Wilson were buds, and they did everything together. And Wilson actually played pretty well in relief of Rodgers overall compared to what he had done in previous years with them.
Yes,
so
totally agree.
I think that mentorship leaf has been turned with Rodgers a little bit more than it ever was with Roethlisberger. I got to bring up something here, Corey, for us. Biggie Bronco says, "You're on drugs if you think George Pickens is better than Davante Adams." Two things here.
Clarence clear, baby. Clarence clear.
He is on drugs.
Performance enhancing Clarence, baby.
Biggie Bronco, he is on drugs. And then number 2, he didn't actually say George Pickens is better than Davante Adams. He said he's more athletic than Davante Adams, which is absolutely the case. So I think that's what you were trying to say. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth from there.
I like George Pickens's catch radius way better than I like Davante Adams' catch radius. Let's put it that way. You could have a more off-target throw to George Pickens than you could to Davante Adams, and expect Pickens to make that catch than you would Davante Adams.
Sounds good. I agree with
I'm
like the fact
hoping
that
I'm making sense at this point. I'm
yeah,
gibbering like Clareton's
you're
taking
good.
over.
All right. Kind of a speculative question here, but Jamie Carla asks, what numbers do you think the new guys will be wearing? Let's have some fun with this one. Let's start with the first round pick. We know what he's going to wear. Number
I
99,
love that
Derek
pick.
Harmon in 99.
Love it.
I love it.
Love it.
That's a great number. Caleb Johnson, what do you think his number is going to be, Corey? We haven't had an announcement on that, have we? I don't think we have.
Well, I'm trying to remember through some of the numbers that I know they won't be picking. Nobody's getting 32.
Yep. Or 36.
What was his number in college? Was it 21?
2.
2.
It was 2.
I mean, 2's free. 2's definitely free.
No, Mason is 2. They announced that last week.
Oh, that's right. Mason Rudolph came back. He's got number 2 again. They didn't even announce that either. They just straight up gave it to him, and they didn't even announce it.
They put it on Twitter like last week before the draft, just like a whole list of guys who had new numbers.
Yeah.
So I think it would be 20, or it may be another single digit. I don't know. They've been willing to give those out to guys recently.
I mean 22, but
I think 22 was given to somebody as well. Let's see.
Yep. Pretty sure.
Try to find that tweet.
I'm trying to think.
Okay, so Rudolph got 2. Kenneth Gainwell got 21. Juan Thornhill got 22. Slay's going to wear 23. Echols going to wear 26. And then the rest don't matter for running backs. But
24?
24
if he's 2.
Joey Porter, yeah.
If he's 2, yeah, 24.
I'm going to go to the Steelers roster here and see what numbers they've got given out right now.
Wow, you got me stumped on this one.
Yeah. This is definitely one too.
Late 20s. I'm going to say late 20s, but that's also quarterback numbers.
Okay, so of the single digit numbers, 1, 7, or 1 and 7 are available. So I don't think he's going to get any of those.
I don't think he's getting 7.
And then it's 20.
I can see 20.
It's
20
20.
Is 2
that's the only one that's available right now. So it's got to be 20. 32 is available, but they won't do that. 34. 34 could be maybe.
Make
and then 36 and 37.
Better. We got to raise the stakes of Mendenhall's number, so we give it to Caleb Johnson so he can make it better.
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
All right. I'll say 20. You say 34. We'll call that one. Okay. So then Jack Sawyer,
Captain
the next
Jack.
pick in the 4th round, Captain Jack Sawyer. I feel like that's going to end up being something in the 40s. 47 and 48 are available, and 44 is available. But all the 50s are taken. Nope, sorry, 58 and 59 are not taken. So it could be a 90 number 2, right? Because he's outside linebacker, but all the 90s are taken. Yeah, straight through the 90s, they're taken. So it's going to have to be one of those 50 numbers or a 40 number. I'm going to say 47.
He wore 33 in college. He definitely ain't wearing 43 in the pros.
Nope. If he wore 33, could he go 44 to keep the 11s going? Maybe he does that. 44.
Yeah, that's possible. 55. 55.
Yeah. Nope. Cole Holcomb's 55.
That's right. So I'm remembering all these past players that weren't, not the current ones.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Devin Bush and stuff like that.
Let's talk Will Howard as kind of the last one here. Will Howard's going to have to be 7 or 1 at this point.
1 seems to be that backup number that everybody keeps getting. Brian St. Pierre had it. Dennis Dixon had it. Wait, Dennis Dixon had 2. Never mind. Sorry. I remember a couple guys that had 1, but Gary Anderson, kicker. He had him.
Yeah. He's going to have to wear one because they're not giving 7 to him.
No,
You'd think.
no, they're not
So,
giving him 7.
all right.
No.
Yeah. So there you have it. One for Will Howard, and we'll leave the 7th round guys alone because they'll probably double up for training camp.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right.
Number 3, Howard. Number 3.
Yeah, it could be 3. There you go.
That's not a bad number. That's not a bad
Nope.
number. I don't.
Just real quick. Brandon Hallam asked, "Is Shedeur still on the board?" That's a good one. That's a good one. I like it.
Love
it. Let's see here. Here's a good question about the quarterback situation from George T. Do the Steelers have someone to help develop a rookie quarterback with upside? And my answer to this question is I think Arthur Smith can do that. Like I said, Desmond Ritter's out of the league, basically, and they won 7 games with him as a starter. They won 7 games with Marcus Mariota as a starter before he quit on them half or like 3 quarters into the season. And then, I mean, they still won 7 games. And I'm not saying that's a great season or anything like that, but that was not a good team, those Atlanta Falcons teams, and they win 7 games with those quarterbacks. I think Arthur Smith can elevate quarterback play in his offense.
I will just say this one time, and I'll never repeat it again, but it seems that the Steelers have the same luck with developing quarterbacks that the Browns do. I mean, outside of Big Ben, who have they developed? When you look back at their history, they haven't developed anybody. So I don't know the answer to this question because I don't know if the Steelers really have anybody who could help a rookie quarterback develop. That's just the truth. Now, that being said, I think that if you bring Rodgers into the room, you're counting on it. And boy, I'm hoping that what we were saying earlier about, Rodgers turning a corner and helping to develop the next quarterback is true, because that is absolutely doubly important now. I don't know what the answer to that is. I saw that I saw that last statement that I made about the quarterbacks on X the other day, and it really had me thinking about the history of these two teams and their ability to develop quarterbacks. And just the only difference between these two teams in the last 30 years has been Roethlisberger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, and the elevation that he brought to the entire roster. So, all right, let's see here. A couple number comments real quick. I think number 1 is out of the question. Somebody mentioned Gary Anderson in here, and I was like, oh, that's right. I always forget about Gary Anderson.
Yes, sir. Second best
number 3 is available.
History.
That's right. Number 3 is available in the single digits, and then 12 isn't happening. So 18 in the
yeah, I think I saw Big G bring that number up.
Yep. So, and some of these things are gonna change throughout the as guys get cut as well. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind with all this.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Afton Forred asks, what was the one draft pick for any team that had you scratching your head? Corey, can you think of one that had you scratching your head from the NFL draft? It can be any team.
I mean, I think the one that had me scratching my head the most, I think, was just where the Panthers took Tet McMillan. I think that he's a great fit for that team.
Yeah.
And obviously, as a first-round pick, you're going to have to figure out where to get him. I think that they took him early when they could have moved back. And receiver was probably not their most pressing need. So I felt like they could have done a lot to improve that terrible defense that they had in the first round, including, had they taken Grant or, Kenneth Grant or Derek Harmon. They could have went in a lot of different directions in wide receiver to make that team better.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll just throw it out there because it was the most head scratching pick of all time was when the Browns trade back up for Shedeur Sanders after passing on him for a different quarterback earlier on in Dylan Gabriel. That made no sense. You they literally slapped him in the face and said, "No, we're taking Dylan Gabriel." And then they came back later and said, "Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We did that. We'll take you." And then they didn't even look excited about it. So that was the most head scratching pick. If I was going a different route, though, the Atlanta Falcons trading back into the first and taking James Pierce Jr. I know he's got a lot of upside, but this is a troubled young man from all accounts that was probably going to slide to them in the second round, I think. So
there's only one other dude in the draft that I think that might be more troubled than him, and the Ratbirds got him. That being Mike Green. But that being said, I think that what the Browns did, the Browns are going to Browns. They're going to do what they do, and we're going to keep shaking their head at them until they finally get it right and they take a step up and pass us, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. But it is what it is. The Browns are going to continue to do what they do. It's I don't know how to feel about the Browns. I feel sorry for them more than anything. But by all means, all the experts said that they had an amazing draft, and when you look at it, it wasn't bad. So you have to feel bad for the Browns. Like, they have all these amazing paper drafts, but yet they can't put a product on the field that I don't know. Listen, if it means that the Steelers are going to continue to be great at the Browns' expense, by all means, yeah, sure. But I mean, listen, I think the NFL as a whole is better when the Ravens, the Browns, and the Steelers are all playing well and playing together and playing as a division, and they're all competitive, and it just makes for a better product.
Yep. Well, and I think we can all put to bed the conversation about, was it the money or was it the plan for Myles Garrett that made him re-sign with the Browns? It was obviously planned because, after they re-signed him, they brought in Kenny Pickett, which who wouldn't love that? And then they brought in Joe Flacco. That was incredible. And then, they draft Dylan Gabriel. You just Myles Garrett know that this plan was going to work. And then they said, you know what? We're going to wait, and then we're going to take the guy who should have gone in the first round. That's what we're going to do, Myles. So you sign with us, and we're going to come back in the fifth round, and we're going to take the guy that should have been taken in the first round. That's how we're going to approach this. And I know you said money doesn't matter, but here's like $60 million, and this is our plan. So just tell people it was the plan. That's what it was, Myles.
The only way they could have made this worse had they given Shadur Sanders Watson's guaranteed contract right out of the gate. I mean, they've got 5 quarterbacks on the roster right now. I mean, obviously Watson's probably not going to be playing, but they've got 5 quarterbacks on their roster right now. And I think it was, not Tomlin, I'm sorry. Bill Cowher said it at one point. If you've got 2 quarterbacks vying for the starting position, you don't have any. So they've got 5. They don't have any.
They really don't have any.
They don't have it. They're literally throwing anything against the wall to see what sticks at this point.
Yes.
Kevin Stefanski, and I can see why, because Kevin Stefanski's job's on the line at this point.
Well, and there's some comments in the chat that make sense to me too, that it feels like it was Jimmy Haslam picked up the phone and said, guys, Shadur Sanders is still on the board.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to take him or you're fired.
Absolutely.
So
no, definitely.
Yeah. This is one take that I want to throw up here that we just got on here. Debbie Dickerson, a lot of people asking for Ben Roethlisberger to come back and coach. And I always sit back and say, does Mason Rudolph want Ben Roethlisberger to come back and be his quarterback coach? And would he say to a rookie, you know what, you really want this guy to come back and be your quarterback's coach? Because he took me under his wing when I was drafted, and look at me. No, I just don't know. I just don't know if that would be a good idea, honestly.
They say that typically the best coaches are the players that aren't star players, because your star players are relying a lot more on talent that people don't necessarily have on the regular. So you've got to be able to, if in your limited talent, you've got to be able to maximize what you've got. And at that point, only the X's and O's are the difference. So it actually makes sense that more mediocre players make better coaches. That being said, Big Ben is not a mediocre player, so I don't think he's going to be a coach. He sees
Yeah.
things at 6'5" running around like a backyard quarterback that no other quarterback's ever going to be able to see.
Yeah, he did it his own way. It was just a special, different brand of football.
Yeah.
Nobody played like he did, you know?
Nope.
I mean, honestly, the closest thing was to the backyard ball, crazy throw stuff was maybe Aaron Rodgers. And Rodgers kind of perfected it to another level because he was so efficient with it. Whereas
Right.
Roethlisberger would be like, I don't care if there's 3 guys down there. I'm going to throw it anyway.
I keep
Rodgers
going
was a
back
little
to
more calculated.
that Cowboys play with Ben Roethlisberger where he's like avoiding 18 dudes before he throws it down the sideline to
Yeah.
Heath for the touchdown. Like that's Ben Roethlisberger. That's the perfect play to show who he is.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Corey. Who was your favorite pick in this draft class?
Harmon.
Don't steal my guy now. Okay, Harmon. Okay, good job.
Yeah, I mean it's Harmon. That was the most glaring need. I think the only way that they could have made me personally any happier was if they had taken Kenneth Grant, but they didn't have an opportunity because he went 13. You know, and in that aspect, when you're looking between those two players, Kenneth Grant has better physical tools that could end up making him a better player in the future. But Harmon is an absolute to the letter perfect fit. I mean, the dude almost looks and sounds like Cam. So
100%.
I'm totally stoked about this pick. I can't wait to see this dude play and to hear his backstory about his mom. Just, man, God bless your heart, dude. I'm not crying.
Yeah.
You are. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
This dude is a Steeler through and through, and I am so glad to have him on the team.
Yeah, I agree. He's not my favorite pick, but Derek Hayward, that's a good one. He's a good one.
Yeah.
I know it's Harmon, but he looks so much like Hayward. I just
how
had
about
to
for
say
you?
Derek Hayward. So my favorite, and I'll just bring up, Kathy or Afton Forehead's prediction because she's right. It's Caleb Johnson. It's Caleb Johnson. I've been pounding the table for this guy
for him the whole time.
all freaking off season.
I wasn't as vocal about it as you were, but I also wanted him more than any other back, including Giddens or anybody else.
I did not think he was going to be there. There was no scenario that played out where he was going to be there at 83. I thought maybe he could fall into the early portion of the third round because
I didn't even see that.
He was such a scheme fit, but I thought the Steelers would have to trade up for him because these running backs were just going to go fast, right? But then he's still sitting there on the board at 83. Let me give you some stats on this guy that make me think that he's going to be something special for the Pittsburgh Steelers. After contact, all right? After contact, he averaged 4.5 yards per carry, which was second best behind Ashton Genty.
Yeah. And Genty was generational in that aspect last year.
Yes.
So let's be clear about that. Genty was generational in that number, and Johnson was right there.
Johnson was astonishing. I mean, 4.5 yards per carry after contact is ridiculous. He faced a loaded box on 57% of his carries. That was the most in college football. But when he did not face a loaded box, when it was a light box, 6 or fewer, he averaged, Corey, 9.8 yards per carry.
Yeah, I saw that
averaged
number earlier.
9.8 yards per carry. So the question comes to me then, okay, perfect scheme fit for Arthur Smith in this offense. But the Steelers often play against loaded boxes, right? In their running game. But you brought in DK Metcalf this offseason. You didn't have a DK Metcalf last year. You had George Pickens and a bunch of hopefuls.
Also Rans.
Yes. You have now DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Teams cannot load the box on you like that. And if Roman Wilson takes any step forward.
Oh, yes, they can. They can load the box
all
they want.
Please do. And then 2 strikes from Aaron Rodgers to DK Metcalf or George Pickens down the field, and that won't be happening anymore. And then you're getting Kyron Johnson behind this improved offensive line, and a good and a scheme now that Arthur Smith can run that he really
and he can take control and have confidence
in a scheme that Arthur Smith wants to run. Then this is you're cooking with gas now, and then you sprinkle in the Jaylen Warren and stuff, and you feel really, really good about that. So, and I'll say this too. Everybody was like, oh, we didn't want another Najee Harris. We wanted somebody explosive. don't
We
let the
got him.
4.57 40-yard dash fool you with this kid. I was just reading it earlier today. Dale Lally put it out there. He runs. He's hit 22 miles per hour before on his runs. That's Derrick Henry in the open field. That's guys like DK Metcalf in the open field. That not many people can hit 22 miles per hour with the ball in their hands in the open field. He does it. So he is explosive. It may not be multiple gears, but he gets to that last gear real quick, and it's fast.
I'll say this much for running backs, they put a lot of stock into that 40 time, but that 40 time only really matters if you're trying to outrun the outside linebacker and the safety in the corner. By that time, you're already past most of the defense, and that's when your top speed matters. So most of the time, we should be looking at shuttle cone times and things like that, where it's more about how quick you are. And I think that Johnson was towards the top of some of those times for his group. So his quickness is there. He may not have he may not have the overdrive on, gear number 6, but
Yeah.
if you're getting through gears 1 through 4 pretty quick, that's just as good, especially
Right.
on your outside zone runs where you've got to make that one step plant and go. That's crucial. Having those quick, quick cone times.
Yeah, and he eats up yardage with long strides.
Yes,
Like
he's a
that's
very long strider. Yes.
long strider. And far be it for me to compare him to Derrick Henry as a runner, because their body types are completely different and they operate differently. But what is Derrick Henry like is the long strides once he gets into the open field that just kind of erases angles from defenders. And if he gets going, then you're not going to catch him unless you're running 4-3 from the other side of the field to catch him. You know what I mean? It's just different. So
linebackers aren't catching him. Safeties and corners aren't tackling him because he's got all those busted tackles. So he's got a great combination. And I mean, as much as I'm excited to see Derek Harmon play on defense, I'm excited to see Caleb Johnson play on offense.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Okay. So this question came up earlier from AFL 67. Jeremy, so why did Andrew not like him? So, this is more about that he liked other people better. Okay. He liked DJ Giddens better because he felt that Giddens had the wiggle, to run the wide zone and the vision to hit the holes and stuff, plus the 4.42 speed that Johnson didn't have when he ran his 40-yard dash.
So he likes that quarter step faster.
He does. And I think he likes the breakaway speed, whereas Johnson kind of needs the lane to be there to break it. DJ Giddens can create the lane, and Travion Henderson can create the lane with their speed to get out there. So you do need a little bit better blocking for Caleb Johnson than you do those guys. But what I liked about Caleb Johnson is I just thought he was better at reading those blocks than those guys, where Travion Henderson and DJ Giddens, they needed the path to be pretty clear for them where they needed to go. While Caleb Johnson can be a little bit more patient, sit back there and pick his spot and pick right. So it's not a guessing game with him as much as it is with the other guys. So that was why I think Andrew preferred some other guys. But again, there were guys on my side of the fence. There were guys on the other side of the fence, as it is with all evaluators out there. But I'm really excited about it. So, Corey, it's been fun. We're going to. Oh, well, let me say this real quick too. Caleb Johnson had 0 fumbles last season, I believe. So takes care of the football too. I think he's had 1 fumble in his college career or 2 fumbles in his college career. So it was a very low fumble rate for him. But Corey, any final thoughts you want to give on this, about the draft, about what's next for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think we can sit back and say come Monday when the deadline has been hit for free agents counting against the comp formula, that you're going to see the Steelers bring in a few more players. They still got cap space to work with before they have to sign their rookie class. So look for some moves to be made. Aaron Rodgers probably being one of those here soon.
Yep.
And then, so anything else that stood out to you?
I mean, I totally expect Aaron Rodgers to sign. Well, I shouldn't say that. With the situation that the Steelers are in, I think that everybody knows what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. I just feel that with the situation with Rodgers, there's no hurry in it anymore. We all know what's going to happen. It's inevitable at this point. So we may not see Aaron Rodgers sign until almost close to training camp, because that will allow the team to negotiate with other players, find out what kind of flexibility they have financially. So I could see a point where Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign until almost close to camp. I could also see Aaron Rodgers signing tomorrow, you know. But I feel that that is the next shoe to drop in all of this, and
Yeah.
that's the next piece that needs to get solidified. It's there. It's kind of ephemeral, you know. It's not really there, but you want to put your hands on it, but it's not there yet. And so I think that that's got to happen for the Steelers. They have to get him under contract. They have to make sure that that is solid, because again, I keep going back to this because I got this chip in the back of my head that is just saying he's going to screw this team. I don't want it to happen, but it's a possibility until he signs the contract.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you shall see. And you know, I think they need to attack the offensive line a little bit more in free agency now. So that would be my other thing that I'm looking at here. But for now, the Steelers have gotten through the big portion of the offseason talent acquisition. So now it's time to start looking at this roster and seeing, you know, what kind of thing they're building this year. If it's going to be better than last year, and the schedule release comes out soon, so we're going to know, you know, what to look for from the schedule. But one thing I really think we can say, to answer, you know, some of the big questions at the end after the draft is completed, is that a Mike Tomlin team's always going to be hovering around that same spot.
Yep.
Did they do enough personnel wise, and will they do enough in the training and lead up to the season and coaching phase to elevate the ceiling? We shall see. If not, they're going to try to get their ceiling raiser next year in the draft. We have that to look forward to. 2025 is a stepping stone to that. If you win something, great. If you don't, that's fine. Go figure it out next year when you have the chance to go get a starting quarterback.
I just have one question, if that's the case, where if Coach Tomlin has tried to sell this team, or more specifically, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, and Micah Fitzpatrick, that this was going to be a building year, and they're running out of time on their own careers, what did he have to tell them to sell them into that? I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that conversation.
Yeah, me too. I don't know, man. I think that's Aaron Rodgers is the appeasement of that. So
I agree with you. That has to be the appeasement, because what else do you have that? Because I mean, if you're trying to sell them on a season where Mason Rudolph's the quarterback, they're just going to be like, what?
Sure. But you couldn't. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep extending it, but you couldn't go to them and say, okay, well, we're going to go get Sam Darnold, or we're going to go get
totally agree
whoever, this year, and pay them for 3 more seasons and forego the thing next year. You couldn't do that. So you had to say, okay, well, this is the plan. We're going to get somebody in here that can help us this year. We think that's probably going to be Aaron Rodgers. But you know, if he decides not to, that's not on us, but we can't do anything this year to sabotage our chances of getting our franchise quarterback in the draft next year. And take it or leave it, guys. But both of those guys were already under contract, so they've had to take it. Or request to trade out, and none of those guys were doing it. I think they believe in the defense enough to where they think if they get a good quarterback, they can have a chance. And so Aaron Rodgers is the appeasement of that. Really believe it.
Yeah, totally agree.
All righty. Good stuff. As always, thank you to the chat. Thank you for your conversation, your questions. We appreciate it. We're an hour into this thing, but we are going to end it here. Until next time, I'm Jeremy Betts. That's Corey Eckenroth. This has been the Steelers Q&A.